At the end of the 1980s, Titan K-278 Komsomolets nuclear-powered submarine, symbol of strength, impenetrable naval weaponry of the Soviet Navy. Its inception marked a significant and powerful transformation, elevating the status of this superpower to par with the United States in the realm of military naval vessels. With a mission to set records in 1985, with the capability to dive to a depth of 1,020 meters, it became the world's deepest diving submarine, surpassing all contemporaneous submarines by a wide margin. At such depths, it was nearly invisible within the depths of the ocean. Both sonar signals disappeared, and no type of sonar could detect it, let alone approach and attack the vessel. Yet, only 6 years after its launch, Komsomolets astonishingly set a new, rather uncelebrated record when it disappeared at a depth of 1,600 meters and remained submerged for many years without resurfacing. After a serious incident, it became a colossal Titan coffin, forever resting at the bottom of the deep sea, leaving behind a terrifying threat of radiation for all of humanity. What really happened on that submarine? A well-executed cyber attack by an adversary or technological limitations exacted a toll on the Soviet Navy. All of it will be reenacted in today's video: the tragedy of the oceanic behemoth, the Komsomolets submarine fire. The K-278 Komsomolets, known as the Mike class by NATO designation, was the sole vessel of the classified Project 685, designed to meet the challenge of developing a submarine capable of carrying a mixed load of torpedoes and cruise missiles, including Soviet nuclear warheads. The name Komsomolets means a member of the Communist Youth League Komsomol, reflecting the hopes of the Soviet Navy and the state for this submarine. Komsomolets was designed with a length of 117.5 meters. The width of Komsomolets is 17.7 meters, and its weight reaches up to 8,000 tons, including 7 reinforced compartments. It was equipped with a safety compartment for emergency escape and 2 liquid metal-cooled reactors, serving the operational needs. The hull of Komsomolets was constructed using titanium, enabling it to withstand higher pressure and dive much deeper than other submarines of its time. Just 1 year after entering active service, and with its outstanding performance, K-278 was incorporated into the anti-submarine fleet of the Northern Fleet. In addition to being equipped with a range of state-of-the-art weapons, including the SN-15 Starfish anti-submarine missiles, 8 standard ZT-65 torpedoes, and VA-111 Stfal, it also had an anti-torpedo system and 6 torpedo tubes of 533 millimeters. On February 28, 1989, the submarine, under the command of Captain First Rank Evgeny Vanin, mobilized more than 69 crew members, departed from the port, and embarked on its 3rd military campaign in the North Norwegian Sea. After a month of patrolling and monitoring enemy vessels, on April 7, 1989, an unexpected incident occurred with the Komsomolets submarine. Approximately 180 kilometers southwest of the Bear Island, in the notorious region known as the Cold North Sea, due to its harsh weather conditions and year-round ice cover, the K-278 submarine was on its way back to base after a diving mission at an average depth of 381 meters. At 11 o'clock that day, as usual, Seaman Nodari Buknikashvili reported to the duty officer, Lieutenant Alexander Vereskov, that everything was fine in compartment number 7, which was the control room located near the rear of the submarine.
Report. Compartment number 7 has completed the inspection. Power source and air components are all normal.
But as Nodari Buknikashvili was finishing his report, a sudden electrical malfunction occurred. The fire quickly ignited the hot oil in the oil separation system. Valves in the gas pipeline were destroyed. Compressed oxygen was pumped into the compartment, leading to a fierce and intense blaze. In the control room, Lieutenant Vyacheslav Yudin detected an abnormal increase in temperature at the rear of the submarine. He quickly tried to communicate with compartment number 7 through the radio, but received no response. Immediately, the incident was reported to the captain, and an alarm was sounded throughout the entire vessel.
The fire at the rear of the submarine quickly spread. Closing off compartments and firefighting efforts were initiated.
Despite it being lunchtime, well-trained seamen quickly donned breathing masks, assembled and followed orders. Others with expertise were assigned to meticulously monitor and control pressure levels. Chief Engineer Valentin Bebenko proposed to Captain Igor Vladimirovich Baranov a plan to extinguish the fire using premix gas, a non-combustible cooling gas. But Valentin Bebenko hesitated because this substance could be lethal to anyone exposed to it, and at that moment, Seaman Nodari was still inside the compartment.
Captain, there's no more time. If we don't proceed right now, not to mention compartment 7, all of us will perish and Komsomolets will be destroyed.
For the greater good, right after that, Evgeny Vanin reluctantly ordered the release of frail gas into compartment number 7, which also meant Nodari's sacrifice. However, a terrible thing happened as the compressed air pipe had been ruptured, continuously feeding fuel to the fire. This meant that the premix gas couldn't extinguish the flames in time, catching compartment 7 on fire. It inadvertently ignited the beards in compartment 6, breaching the bulkhead and rapidly spreading through electrical cables. Everything happened too quickly, and some officers didn't even have time to put on their masks. The poison room claimed the lives of a few immediately, while the rest suffered severe poisoning and tried to escape. By now, Turbin's self-protection mechanism had kicked in and rendered it inoperative. The propeller also stopped turning, preventing the reactor from melting down. The backup power system was also cut, leaving the submarine in a state of complete loss of control, motionless at a depth of 152.4 meters. Now, the captain and the crew faced the daunting task of saving themselves and rescuing the submarine in this life-and-death struggle within the vast ocean. More than 10 minutes after the initial incident at 11:13, Komsomolets' oil pump system was also cut, and the submarine lost its hydraulic pressure system. The vertical rudders got stuck, and the horizontal rudder at the rear of the vessel was also out of control. When all efforts to maneuver the submarine proved futile, relying on his experience, Captain Evgeny Vanin ordered the blowing of the ballast tanks to create buoyancy and lift the vessel. Simultaneously, he urgently sent out a distress signal to the command center. After the first explosion, the Komsomolets surged to a depth of nearly 91.4 meters. This process was repeated with the other ballast tanks, and finally, after a series of successive explosions, the submarine successfully surfaced. Inside, the crew struggled to contain the flames, isolating compartment 7, providing premix to compartment 6, and sealing off the remaining compartments.
Leave him on the platform! Go to compartment 9!
The immediate danger was brought under control, but here, over 60 people faced a new threat. It was carbon monoxide, CO, a colorless, odorless toxic gas that began infiltrating the breathing air supply from compartment 7, causing most of them to feel dizzy and short of breath. The severely burned and poisoned crew members were brought up to the surface, where the air was fresher. Lieutenant and medic Leonid Zayats tirelessly performed artificial respiration on the affected sailors. Some who had lost consciousness gradually regained consciousness. However, surfacing didn't necessarily mean that Komsomolets was safe. And by 11:21, in an unexpected turn of events, it was discovered that the fire was still inside the cable channels, spreading to all compartments except the sealed control compartment number 1. The temperature inside the submarine rose to over 1,000 degrees Celsius. At this point, K-278 was no different from a massive nuclear reactor poised to detonate in the depths of the ocean. The surrounding seawater began to boil. Fortunately, the submarine's hull was constructed from titanium, an ultra-hard lightweight alloy that is resistant to corrosion and has a melting point of up to 1,650 degrees Celsius, so it remained temporarily safe. However, the rubberized outer layers exceeded their heat resistance capacity, and sections of them began to peel away from the hull. Even more perilous, after a period of surfacing and losing buoyancy, the rear of the submarine began to sink, while the bow rose higher. With no time to wait, a classified message was sent to the command center of the Northern Fleet. At 11:41, this unit received the initial signal, but due to incomplete information, they only knew that a Soviet submarine was trapped somewhere. It wasn't until 12:19, when the situation became dire, that the captain disregarded Soviet security encryption regulations to send an SOS signal pleading for assistance with the message.
In the vicinity of Bear Island, a Soviet nuclear submarine is on fire. The vessel is surfacing, and the crew is fighting for their lives.
And these signals immediately had an impact. Just minutes later, rescue vehicles began to mobilize, along with the long-range Dolphin 2 to 38 aircraft. The command center swiftly deployed other vessels that were approximately 100 kilometers from Komsomolets to join the rescue operation. In the Norwegian Sea, sea winds began to pick up, with waves rising as high as 1.2 meters, forcing the crew to find ways to cling to the slippery surface of the hull. Over 2 hours after the final distress call at 14:40, rescue aircraft arrived on the scene and spotted the K-278 floating silently on the surface. Black smoke continued to billow. At this point, most of the crew had gathered on the deck, with only a few remaining below, desperately trying to save the submarine. They were all relieved and believed they had escaped the danger. But it's worth noting that this aircraft didn't have the ability to land on the water like helicopters. It could only drop rescue pods. This meant that the crew had to jump into the water and climb aboard these pods to stay alive. However, the crew of the K-278 made a critical mistake in not having the necessary diving gear with them at that time. The reason they were so complacent is that they always believed the Komsomolets, constructed from the world's toughest materials, was an invincible, unsinkable weapon that could remain afloat for hours. However, they couldn't fathom that outside, the seawater with a temperature of 2 degrees Celsius was gradually freezing and could render them unconscious or even dead within 15 minutes. With only a few sailors making it onto the pods, 2 of which was far too few for their number, the rest had to rely on the hope of a rescue ship's arrival. But what about the remaining warriors trying to save the submarine? Around 16:30, Captain Evgeny Vanin ordered the sequential detonation of 2 ballast tanks in a last-ditch effort to stabilize the submarine. Instead of salvaging the situation, this action actually caused the submarine to sink even faster. Having lost all hope, the captain finally had to issue the order to abandon the submarine. He and a few others ventured deep inside to urgently locate any remaining crew members. Outside, water was beginning to flood the compartments even more. If this continued, in just a few seconds, they would all be submerged. Officer Kopejko, feeling helpless, shouted for everyone to get out as the water below was silent and could not be waited on any longer. He had to grit his teeth and tightly close the bulkhead door, whispering prayers that they would find a way to survive through the escape chamber. After a desperate search through the thick smoke and flames, 5 others were located, including the officer in charge of the diesel generator. The captain led them all to the equipped escape chamber near the front of the submarine. This large steel capsule was designed to withstand extreme pressure at great depths. with enough capacity to rescue all 69 people on board. However, in this dire situation, it became stuck. It wasn't until the submarine sank to a depth of 400 meters that the high pressure caused the escape capsule to successfully deploy. It seemed that all the heroes of K-278 had been rescued. However, it appeared that death was not done with them yet. When they were close to the surface, a sudden pressure differential blew off the escape pod hatch. 2 people were expelled and seawater rushed in. Only one sailor, Viktor Slusarenko, surfaced and survived. The others, including Captain Evgeny Vanin, went down with the submarine at 17.8. The mighty nuclear-powered submersible sank to a depth of 1,680 meters at an 80-degree angle in the waters of the Norwegian Sea. Beneath the icy waters, the survivors who had managed to escape from the start were also fighting for their lives. Although a second rescue plane had arrived and dropped more life rafts, it still wasn't enough to accommodate the roughly 50 people in the water. The extreme cold had taken its toll, and some people even resorted to using their teeth to hold onto the ropes on the life rafts to avoid being swept away. However, the suffering didn't end there. Due to the overloaded rafts, one of them capsized. Those who were already weakened by carbon monoxide poisoning and lack of oxygen now had to endure the biting cold winds and rough waves, making it impossible for them to hold on any longer. They had no choice but to let go and surrender to the embrace of the open sea. After 5 agonizing hours, by 18 o'clock, the last rescue ships had finally arrived. They managed to save 30 submariners, while 39 remaining crew members perished. Most of them succumbed to the extreme cold. The survivors were taken to the Alexei Kolobystov floating base, but this tragedy left profound and lasting consequences. 3 other naval officers died due to the detection of excessive toxic gas in their lungs. The causes of the shipwreck tragedy. The Komsomolets incident sparked outrage among the Soviet people, as they believed that if the Navy had not been slow and inefficient in their rescue efforts, the casualty toll would not have been as significant. This event marked a significant tragedy in the history of the Soviet Navy and raised numerous questions about safety and procedures in submarine operations. The investigative committee was established, and in their report, they identified several design flaws that led to electrical failures and the fire on board K-278. The inadequate heat resistance of components and firefighting equipment on the vessel made it difficult for the crew to respond to and control the situation. Additionally, K-278 Komsomolets was initially used as a platform for testing technology, which may have contributed to safety and technical issues on the ship. However, most of the sailors found were inexperienced recruits from the Navy's 5th Division, with little prior experience. In fact, some individuals were tasked with responsibilities beyond their expertise, including the captain. This was also the captain's first time commanding a submarine in such a high-ranking position. Consequently, errors in such a challenging situation were almost inevitable. Ultimately, Soviet officials had to acknowledge that the Komsomolets accident had exposed weaknesses and deficiencies in both technology and search and rescue training within the Navy. This undoubtedly compelled them to focus on improvements for the future to ensure the safety of their crews and submarines. Gratitude, commemoration, and recovery. This is a tribute to the honorable dedication of the entire crew of the Komsomolets submarine. They were awarded the prestigious Order of the Red Banner by the Supreme Soviet Council of the USSR, and a memorial was erected in the city of St. Petersburg to honor them. As of 2009, Russian authorities have conducted over 70 inspections and surveys of the Komsomolets submarine. Moscow had employed special measures to protect the vessel, turning it into a massive titanic tomb lying at a depth of 1,600 meters beneath the Norwegian Sea. While there have been claims that the vessel suffered no severe damage, and that the torpedoes and nuclear reactors on board pose no significant threat to the environment, in the not-so-distant future, continued corrosion could potentially lead to contamination of the water source and even pose a nuclear threat that could endanger humanity.